A female death row inmate in an absolute solitary cell, no contact, no visits, not a single gap, was suddenly discovered to be pregnant. All the evidence, every verdict pointed against her, pushing her into a dead end of death. Yet in the darkest place, a new life still cried out its first breath. That child did not only change the fate of the mother, but also shook an entire system once thought to be unshakable. But the question that torments everyone to the very end is, how could such a thing happen? Naomi King was once seen as a rare model of success in the Black community of Houston, Texas. She was born into an ordinary working-class family. Her father an electrical repair engineer, her mother a nurse. Naomi was intelligent, excelled in school, earned a full scholarship to the University of Texas at Austin, and graduated valedictorian in pharmacy. By the age of 30, she had become a university lecturer, participated in numerous research projects, and was invited to speak at international medical conferences. Her career path was shining bright, her future seemingly unshakable. But at that very moment, she met Jordan Hayes, a young businessman, outwardly successful, with undeniable charm. Jordan confessed his love, promising her a complete and happy home. Naomi believed that after years of effort, this was the reward fate had set aside for her. The marriage happened quickly, after only a few months of knowing each other. Naomi left Austin and moved to Houston to live with her husband, eager to build a family and have children. But soon, everything fell apart. She discovered Jordan was drowning in gambling debts and shady investments. Strange phone calls, men showing up at their door demanding money, all unsettled Naomi. She pleaded with him repeatedly, even offering to sell her own assets to help him start over. But Jordan never changed. One day, he vanished without a word, leaving Naomi with a mountain of debt and countless unanswered questions. In her despair, Naomi received an offer from one of Jordan's acquaintances. If she carried a small suitcase across the Texas-Mexico border, she would get enough money to pay off her debts. The man insisted it was a legal job, just transporting herbal medicine. Naomi, still trusting Jordan deep down, was half skeptical, half desperate, but her hopeless situation pushed her to agree. On February 14, 2021, Naomi was arrested at the Laredo border crossing. Inside her suitcase, police found more than 2 kilograms of refined heroin. None of Naomi's explanations held weight. Every piece of evidence, fingerprints, bank transfers, shipping documents, pointed straight at her. She insisted she had been set up, but no one believed her. Naomi's trial was swift. No witnesses, no lawyer of her choice, only a court-appointed attorney who barely engaged. The prosecution painted her as an intellectual who betrayed her ideals, driven by greed into drug trafficking. They presented mysterious transfers in her name, a phone number tied to her ID, and surveillance footage showing the suitcase being delivered to Naomi's hotel room. She knew it was all orchestrated, but her pleas were dismissed. In just 2 hearings, the jury unanimously convicted her of a capital crime, severe enough to warrant the death penalty. When the judge's gavel struck, Naomi didn't cry out or collapse. She stood still, her eyes vacant. Partly from the shock, but also because, deep inside, she realized she had been placed on a chessboard as a sacrificial pawn. Every escape route was sealed shut. From that moment, Naomi was transferred to Trinity Plains Correctional Complex, the infamous prison near Huntsville, Texas. She was placed in cell 17, reserved for death row inmates, completely cut off from the outside world. Naomi's days became defined by rigid routines. Meals passed through a slot in a door, 10 minutes to shower in a sealed room, artificial light on around the clock, constant surveillance cameras. No visits, no letters, no one to speak for her. She sank into silence. Yet in that silence, she did not surrender. Though buried in darkness, Naomi carried within her a fierce desire, the will to live, not to prove anything to the world, but to preserve what little humanity remained inside her. and that desire began to drive her to find a reason to survive. Naomi King stepped into cell 17 of Trinity Plains Correctional Complex as if she were entering a world where time no longer existed. The steel door clanged shut behind her, 3 overlapping locks sealing her fate, and that heavy sound echoed in her mind for weeks. Inside the cramped cell, the cold white glare of fluorescent lights never went out, swallowing all sense of day and night. Naomi didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't beg. She chose silence. That silence made many guards think she had accepted her fate, but in truth, Naomi was holding on to the last shred of strength she had to keep herself from shattering. Each day in solitary was measured by the footsteps of patrolling guards. In the morning, a tray of cold food slid through the slot in the door. Naomi ate in silence, never wasting a bite, never complaining. At noon, another tray came, identical to the first. At night, the same routine repeated. Occasionally, she was escorted to shower, 10 minutes only, in another sealed room with an observation hole. There was no privacy whatsoever, yet Naomi never resisted, never fought back. The guards on duty recorded in the logbook. Inmate remains quiet, no disturbance, no abnormal behavior. But inside, Naomi was far from quiet. During the long nights, when the block fell into silence, she often sat with her back against the wall, her hand resting on her lower abdomen as if by instinct. She didn't know why she did it. Perhaps because, in that moment, she needed something to remind her she was still flesh and blood, not just a death sentence filed away in a case folder. Every time she looked up at the ceiling, at the camera watching her, she felt the vast distance between herself and the outside world. She knew no appeal of hers would ever be heard. Silence became her only way to preserve what little dignity she had left. The guards, especially female officer Elena Morales, often watched Naomi with confusion. Death row inmates usually broke down, begged for mercy, or turned violent. Naomi was different. She was calm, almost hollow. Morales once tried to talk to her, but Naomi only nodded or shook her head. Morales wrote in her report, "Inmate cooperative, stable psychology, no abnormal behavior." But in her heart, she doubted that stability. It felt more like a shield Naomi had built to hide the storm raging inside. On the night of October 12, 2024, everything changed. Near midnight, Officer Tyler Reed was on duty, monitoring the cameras as usual. On the screen showing cell 17, Naomi suddenly staggered to her feet. She took a step and collapsed, her head striking the corner of the cement bed. Her body went limp. Reed immediately hit the alarm, and the emergency protocol was activated. Within minutes, medical staff and supervisors arrived, unlocking 3 doors and carrying Naomi out on a stretcher. Even then, her right hand clutched her abdomen, her lips bloodied, her breathing faint. In the infirmary, Dr. Arjun Patel worked quickly. Naomi's blood pressure had plummeted, her pulse was weak. To rule out internal injury, he performed an ultrasound. But when the image appeared on the screen, he froze. Inside Naomi's abdomen was a developing fetus, its heartbeat strong, approximately 19 to 20 weeks along. He checked again and again. The result did not change. Naomi King, a death row inmate held in solitary confinement for nearly a year, was pregnant. News spread through the prison in an instant. An emergency meeting was held the next morning. Warden Charles Whitaker flipped through the reports, his expression heavy. In a low voice he said, "She's been in absolute solitary confinement. No visits, no correspondence, no contact with male staff, under 24-hour camera surveillance. So, who got her pregnant?" No one answered. Eyes darted around the room, filled with suspicion. If it was a breach, it meant the collapse of the entire system. If it was something inexplicable, it threatened the prison's very credibility. Meanwhile, Naomi regained consciousness in the infirmary. When Dr. Patel asked if she knew she was pregnant, she nodded. When he asked if anyone had forced her, she shook her head. When he asked who the father was, she stayed silent. Finally, when he asked why she hadn't told anyone, Naomi whispered, "I just want to have my child." Her words left the room in silence. No one knew if it was a confession, a cover-up, or a desperate plea. From that day forward, Naomi was returned to cell 17, but with added cameras and heightened surveillance. Guards whispered among themselves. Perhaps someone had secretly entered her cell. Perhaps Naomi had found a way to communicate. Or perhaps something beyond comprehension had occurred. But Naomi remained the same. She ate her meals, slept little, spoke less, and each night her hand still rested on her belly. No one could understand what was happening in the mind of this death row inmate. The only question echoing through the prison's corridors was, how did Naomi King become pregnant? The moment the ultrasound results were confirmed, Trinity Plains Correctional Complex went into emergency mode. Warden Charles Whitaker convened the command staff that very morning. In the meeting room, the atmosphere was so tense it felt ready to explode. He placed a thick file on the table, his voice low but edged with steel. Naomi King has been in solitary confinement for nearly a year. No visits, no contact with male staff or inmates, 24-hour surveillance. And now she's 20 weeks pregnant. Tell me how this happened. The room went dead silent. No one dared to guess. No one dared to voice a theory. A single wrong word could brand them as covering up or distorting the case. An internal investigation team was immediately formed, including representatives from security, technical operations, medical, and prison management. Over 60 days of surveillance footage from Block D were pulled for review, every frame examined. Door lock logs, meal delivery logs, medical logs, every entry was checked in detail. There was no evidence of Cell 17 being opened illegally. No moment Naomi was taken out beyond protocol. Every procedure followed to the letter. And it was precisely this perfection that raised more suspicion. If there was no breach, then the situation was all the more inexplicable. During interrogations, all female officers responsible for death row were called in. They insisted they had never noticed anything unusual. Captain Elena Morales, the direct supervising officer, reported that Naomi never asked for special medication, only requested extra vitamins and iron supplements, saying she felt dizzy. At the time, no one paid attention. Now, everything was a red flag. Officer Tyler Reed, who was on duty the night Naomi collapsed, was suspended pending investigation. Not because there was evidence against him, but because he was the last to see Naomi before the truth came to light. Reed protested, but it was useless. The system needed a scapegoat while answers remained elusive. The prison buzzed with rumors. In break rooms and during shifts, whispers spread. Did one of us break the rules? Or does Naomi have some way we don't know about? Suspicion grew like wildfire, and everyone felt as if they were under a microscope. Naomi became the center of a silent storm. In her cell, she showed no reaction to the probing stares through the steel slot, saying nothing except one phrase she repeated again and again. "I just want to have my child." Her silence only made people more uneasy. The technical team began inspecting Block D in detail. Then they found something strange. In the ventilation system connecting the technical wing to solitary confinement, a vent had a newly attached dust cloth. At first glance it seemed harmless, but when removed, they discovered a thin nylon cord, less than 2 meters long, wound around a small wooden piece. A gentle tug brought down a plastic bag from the other side. Inside, stained with residue, was a used syringe. When the evidence was laid out in the meeting room, the entire management team froze. A horrifying theory began to take shape. Someone had smuggled semen through the vent, and Naomi had injected it herself. To confirm, the sample was sent for DNA testing. 3 days later, the results returned. It matched Malik Evans, a 26-year-old inmate serving a 30-month sentence in the technical block. Malik had once been a fourth-year medical student, knowledgeable in healthcare, and often helped staff with electrical repairs and storage work. He had no serious record aside from an assault charge from a street fight. Since his incarceration, Malik was known as quiet, compliant, and well-behaved. When summoned, Malik entered the interrogation room looking weary but composed. Warden Whitaker asked directly, "When assisting with electrical repairs near the women's wing, did you have contact with Naomi King?" Malik replied, "No, sir. I only ever saw her from a distance, through the hallway slot." "Did you pass anything to her?" "No." "Did you ever speak with her?" "Never." But when Whitaker asked, "Are you involved in Naomi King's pregnancy?" Malik lowered his head in silence. He neither nodded nor shook his head, only repeating one line over and over, "I never touched her." The ambiguous response left the investigators stuck. There was no direct proof Malik and Naomi had met. No footage showed any exchange. But the DNA could not be denied. The truth seemed to hover on a thin line between law and an unspoken secret. Morales, who had monitored Naomi the longest, noted in her logbook that the inmate showed no panic, no effort to explain. On the contrary, Naomi accepted every suspicious glance with a cold, calm composure, as if she knew exactly what was happening but refused to reveal it. In the days that followed, the prison became a pressure cooker. Every report generated more questions than answers. Malik remained silent. Naomi remained silent. Warden Whitaker lost countless nights of sleep, his mind repeating one relentless question. In an airtight cell, with no men, no contact, no breaches, how did Naomi King become pregnant? When the name Malik Evans appeared in the DNA report, many officers could hardly believe it. A young inmate, gentle, well-behaved, known for his good conduct, could he really have done something so unthinkable? But when the technical team cross-checked the logs, the pieces began to fit. In July, Malik had been assigned to clean the electrical systems in the administrative block, right next to the women's death row wing, where a ventilation shaft connected directly to Naomi's cell 17. That was precisely when Naomi's pregnancy was determined to have begun. During subsequent interrogations, Malik still refused to confess. He only repeated, "I never touched her." His silence led many to think he was being stubborn. But Whitaker and Morales sensed it wasn't ordinary denial. In Malik's eyes, there was something heavier, a secret he held on to, not to escape punishment, but to protect something greater than himself. Then one night, after report yielded no answers, Morales happened to reread the words guards had found scratched on cell 17's wall. "I don't need to live, I only need my child to live." Just below it, a small handkerchief embroidered with 2 slanted red letters, "Peace." Morales sat quietly for a long time, and from that moment, she began piecing together every detail. Naomi never asked for sleeping pills, never caused trouble, never begged for clemency, but clung to silence. It wasn't surrender, it was waiting. A few days later, during a closed-door interrogation, Malik finally spoke. His voice was low and steady, as if reciting a memory etched deep inside. He said that one night in June, while cleaning in the technical wing, he heard a faint cough through the wall. At first he thought it was his imagination, but the next night he heard it again. Curious, he pressed his ear to the vent and realized it was a woman's voice. The following night, a tiny folded paper slipped through the gap, landing at his feet. On it were just 4 words, "I am waiting to die." From that moment, an invisible thread bound 2 souls locked in separate cages. They never saw each other's faces, never exchanged a glance, only knew that on the other side was another desperate human being. Naomi began sending scraps of paper, scribbled with a broken pencil tip or etched with a fingernail on cigarette wrappers. Malik replied with short lines, at first simple comforts, later confessions he had never told anyone. He wrote about his father, who died saving people during a flood, about his little sister harassed by a drunk, about the fight that landed him in prison. Naomi answered with her fury at being framed, her bitterness at a wrongful sentence that ended her life before it had truly begun. Then one night, Naomi sent a trembling note through the vent. "If I could ask for one thing before I die, I want to be a mother." Malik read those words over and over, a dozen times. He knew it wasn't a joke, it was a plea. And he knew Naomi didn't have time. Death row waits for no one. At first, Malik tried to ignore it. He stuffed the note into his pocket, telling himself he couldn't get involved. But in the nights that followed, staring at the moldy ceiling, he kept hearing the faint whispers through the vent, like a prayer. And then, with the reckless courage of someone who had nothing left to lose, Malik chose to do what no one could imagine. While cleaning out an old medical supply room, he secretly kept a few broken syringes, slipping them into his pocket. He collected his own semen in plastic bags, tied them tight, and passed them through the vent with a syringe. He wasn't sure if Naomi would dare, or if it would even work, but he knew he had given her a chance. Naomi embraced that chance as if clinging to the last rope in the abyss. In the darkness, she injected herself again and again, knowing the odds were slim. She felt no fear, no shame. To her, it wasn't a crime. It was the only way to prove she still had worth, that no sentence could erase her instinct to be a mother. And then the miracle happened. She became pregnant. When Malik finished, the interrogation room fell silent. Whitaker's voice was sharp. "Do you understand this was against the law?" Malik answered simply, "Yes." "Then why did you do it?" Malik looked down at the floor, his reply soft. "Because she wasn't asking to live for herself. She was asking for a life." His words weighed heavy on everyone in the room. They didn't lessen his guilt, but they forced them all to confront a truth. Sometimes, even in the darkest places, people will find a way to kindle a fragile light. Naomi remained silent. She neither confirmed nor denied Malik's story. But every night, with her hand resting on her belly, she knew there was a truth inside her no one could erase. The child was the final proof of a quiet rebellion. And from that moment, everyone understood. Naomi King was no longer just a death row inmate waiting for execution. She was a mother, and that was an identity no iron bars could contain. On the night of February 3, 2025, a violent storm swept across Texas. Wind lashed against the prison bars. Rain hammered the tin roof of Trinity Plains as if trying to tear it apart. Thunder cracked again and again, making the entire Block D tremble. Inside Cell 17, Naomi King writhed in pain, her body drenched in sweat. The searing cramps in her lower abdomen cut through her like blades. She knew the time had come. At first, Naomi clenched her teeth, trying to endure it in silence. But when a warm gush suddenly spread across the cold concrete floor, she realized she could hide no longer. A cry of agony burst from her lips, echoing down the corridor. The camera recorded her doubled over, clutching her belly, trembling hands braced against the cement bed. The alarm blared instantly. Officer Reed and two others rushed over. After 3 locks clanked open, Naomi was placed on a stretcher and rushed to the infirmary. In the flickering lightning that pierced through the small window, Dr. Arjun Patel was already there. He examined quickly, his face grim. "Her cervix is dilated. She's in active labor." Nurse Linda Cho scrambled to prepare gloves, towels, antiseptic. The infirmary was cramped with only the barest equipment, nothing close to enough for a complicated birth. Morales hurried in to help, gripping Naomi's hand, whispering, "Hold on, you can do this." The contractions came fierce and relentless. Naomi screamed, biting her lip until it bled, sweat and tears mingling. In her haze, images flashed, the judge's gavel crashing, her ex-husband's face, the suitcase of heroin, the echo of "death sentence" resounding. She thought she might die that night, but she refused to collapse. One thought burned in her mind: my child must live. Thunder roared outside as Naomi bore down with all her strength. Linda shouted, "I see the head, keep going." Naomi's eyes rolled back, her whole body trembling. Then a cry split the air, piercing through the storm. A newborn's wail filled the room, drowning out the pounding rain. A blood-stained infant was lifted into the light, slick with fluid, wrapped in a white towel now streaked red. Linda sobbed aloud. "A baby girl, 6 pounds. Both mother and child are safe." Naomi collapsed onto the bed, gasping for breath, but for the first time in years, a smile broke across her pale face. With trembling hands, she reached out and held her baby close to her chest. The tiny warmth spread through her body like a flame rekindling a soul nearly extinguished. In that moment, the death sentence, the prison, the darkness, all of it disappeared. There was only a mother and her child. Morales looked on, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't describe. In all her years, she had witnessed countless tragedies, but never life emerging from such despair. She clasped her hands and whispered, "God has seen this. This child is innocent." Patel exhaled in relief, wiping his brow. "What's her name?" Naomi whispered, weak but firm, "Amara Hope King." Amara, everlasting light. Hope, the reason to endure. King, the only name she still carried. By morning, the medical report reached Warden Whitaker's desk. The prison's legal team immediately acted. Under federal and Texas law, a woman on death row who is raising a child under 36 months cannot be executed. Naomi's sentence was officially commuted from death to life imprisonment. When told, Naomi did not weep, did not react with joy. She only held Amara tightly and whispered, "I don't live for me, I live for you." Naomi's childbirth shook the entire prison. Some staff saw it as disgrace, a failure of the system. Others quietly called it a miracle in the darkness. Among inmates, whispers spread, and Naomi was spoken of with strange reverence. They began calling her the Mother of the Shadows. For Naomi, the days that followed were a new trial. Each night, Amara's cries echoed through the infirmary. Naomi stayed awake for hours, nursing, rocking her, exhausted yet filled with joy. She knew she was still a prisoner, condemned to life behind bars. But when her baby's tiny fingers wrapped around hers, the chains seemed to melt away. The storm passed, and Texas skies cleared after days of gloom. Sunlight glistened on puddles across the prison yard. Morales walked past the infirmary window and saw Naomi in a wooden chair, cradling Amara, humming a broken lullaby. The image seared into her mind, a death row inmate once silent, now a mother, stronger than anyone she had known. Naomi King, the name once tied only to a death sentence, now carried another identity, the mother of Amara Hope, a child born in the storm, a spark of life in the heart of darkness. 3 months after Amara's birth, the solitary wing of Trinity Plains felt transformed. In the corridors once filled only with the heavy steps of guards, there were now the sounds of a baby's cries and the soft hum of lullabies. Every officer who passed by couldn't help but glance inside. Some frowned, others stayed quiet, but none could deny that the child had brought a new breath of life into the prison. Naomi King, once branded as a death row inmate, was no longer the silent shadow. She devoted every moment to her daughter, feeding her milk, soothing her to sleep, carefully recording in her journal each time Amara smiled or held her hand. Every page became proof of life, proof that Naomi was no longer dying slowly in the dark, but had found a reason to breathe again. Yet Naomi never forgot that she was serving life without parole. Each night, after Amara had drifted into slumber, Naomi gazed at her for a long time, her eyes glowing with love but shaded with sorrow. She knew she could never give her daughter a normal childhood. The towering walls and heavy steel doors were no place for a child to grow up. One late spring afternoon, Morales visited Naomi. Placing a hand gently on her shoulder, she said, "Naomi, have you thought about Amara's future? Here, she will never grow up like other children." Naomi stayed silent, clutching her child to her chest. The words cut deep, but she knew Morales was right. The baby was innocent and deserved a real home, not 4 walls of confinement. A few weeks later, Naomi submitted a request to the prison board, asking that Amara be sent to a community care center for children without guardians. In her letter, she wrote simply, "I am a mother, but I have no right to let my child serve a sentence with me. Please let Amara live free." The letter stunned the entire prison. A woman who once stayed silent through every accusation now spoke only to give her child a chance at life. The day Amara left, the sky was unusually clear. Naomi held her tight, burying her face in the soft scent of baby hair. Amara, unaware of the parting, laughed and babbled, "Mama!" Naomi forced a smile, lips pressed so hard they bled, her trembling hands passing her child into Morales's arms. No tears fell, only a whispered plea, "Live for me." The car door closed, carrying Amara away. Naomi stood still, her room suddenly as empty as when she first entered it. But this time was different. Her heart now carried not just a sentence, but the memory of a smile, a cry, a life she had given to the world. From that day on, Naomi returned to cell 17, back to her familiar darkness, but no longer as a shadow of despair. She wrote letters she never sent, each beginning with, "To my daughter." In every line was hope, love, and faith that one day Amara would read them and know her mother was not just an inmate, but someone who risked everything to bring her into the world. Naomi's story spread beyond the prison walls, not as a scandal, but as proof that even in the deepest darkness, a person can still choose to give life. Amara was innocent, and it was this child who turned a death sentence into a chance to live, who transformed a soul in despair into a mother. Naomi knew she would die inside those walls, but when she smiled at the final words in her journal, she understood she had already won. "I never escaped the darkness, but you are the light." In a place where only darkness and despair seemed to remain, a tiny life was still able to illuminate the meaning of existence. This story reminds us that even in lives bound by confinement, the desire to love and to give remains unbroken. The law may uphold justice, but compassion is what preserves our humanity. A child's birth is never a crime. Rather, that very presence becomes proof that light can take root even in the deepest shadows. For sometimes, forgiveness does not weaken justice. It allows us to recognize the true value of human kindness. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If you found it meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. And don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below.